First of all, thank you very much for me giving the opportunity to be together with civil society organizations. It's always important for us as a UN special rapporteurs because we feel ourselves, we are bridge between civil societies and the UN organizations and governments, and our responsibility will be your voice in the governmental places that is not easy for you to directly to be heard. So I'm happy to be together with you, and I'm happy to learn from you more what are the more salient problems in the local level and to bring some little bit upper level in relation to climate change and food security and hunger. As Madame Rivoal mentioned very well about the problem of the hunger and food insecurity, that I'm not going to repeat on that, but I will talk a little bit about why such an important thing cannot be heard more earlier, couldn't be heard more earlier, and couldn't be really included to UNFCCC or climate change agenda earlier, because this was ongoing problem many years, many decades, and also climate change are ongoing problem in many decades, but to come together, it took quite a long time. It took a village to make it into the agenda why human rights and the hunger and the food security would be part of the UNFCCC. Still, we are not there. We are certainly not there. We are even not closer. Even we put the preamble here and there, some words about the human rights, women empowerment, and the food insecurity. This is just some little tokens that, thanks to civil society, thanks to Human Rights Council, and some of the organization, and some countries that really push this kind of concept to the UNFCCC documents. But inside of the documents doesn't mean that inside of the people's mind. I'm talking about the negotiators. Negotiators are very much focused on their own very narrowly situated agendas, with basically reduction of the greenhouse gas emission. And in order to do that, mitigation, adaptation, and somehow there are new kind of venues that are including over the years. I am very much familiar with the UNFCCC negotiations because before I became a special rapporteur, I was part of the negotiation teams of the Turkish government on climate change. So from the insider, and I know very well that why food security is always, first of all, they were not in the agenda until 2009. And even now, it's completely what I call side order. There is nothing very important in relation to food security, which is extremely important. It's extremely important because it's a human rights issue, as again already mentioned, because of the justice issue. We really have to deal with this concept from the perspective of human rights. Why we have to push the concept of human rights? It is very important because now, as you know, as much as I do, there is a very strong view about going to voluntary guidelines or some kind of soft voluntary principles for the future. We don't know yet what Paris Agreement will have a certain kind of legal structure, and there is a danger that this legal structure will be more voluntary. So if we include human rights perspective to the document, this will give us an extra kind of entitlement that civil society organizations can push more further in their activities, because when Universal Human Rights Declarations came in 1948, it was just a declaration and no countries would would anticipate it that human rights principles will be very strong after 5-6 decades because civil society organizations pushed on that. Among the Universal Human Rights Declaration and 2 covenants, unfortunately we have lagged behind of the civil and political rights because civil and political rights are supported by more prominently Western countries, and the economic and social rights became part of the developing world process or developing world policies. Now this has to change because we cannot really differentiate human rights, one side of civil and political rights, one side of economic and social rights, because what we recently saw, they are so connected. For instance, if you think about a little bit, when food security became an important issue in global agenda. This was 2007 and 2008, food prices crisis. That suddenly international agenda and global institutions are trying to understand the root causes of this sudden food crisis. And then they really understood that we have to really deal with the food crisis from the more global economic perspective and include some other policy issues that they were not here before connected with food crisis, because 2006, 2008, and 2009, and then bring the financial crisis to the world, was basically also created huge of the conflict, internal conflicts in many, many countries. According to FAO reports, almost 47 countries have a food riots internally. And if you look at right now what is happening in the Middle East and Arab Spring, it is the part of the ongoing problem, which is the food crisis and connected with the climate change, because as you know, most the region, Middle East, Sub-Saharan Africa, and South Asia are the most directly impacted by the climate change, and they are the most poorest people in the world. And plus, political problem and the not very effective governance, internal governance, creates easily a political conflict in the world. And also we see recently in migration problems in Europe, as you see, all our problems are now very much connected. If you look at the future, and we see a series of problems in relation to food security and food governance. One of them, of course, we all know there is a increased demand and a decreased supply. When I say decreased supply, I have to make it clear this doesn't mean that we have less food in the world. We have more food, but the decreased supplies mean resources. We have less water, less land, less arable agricultural land. So what we are having right now in the future in 2050, we all talk about it, we need more production, and we need, but this more production will affect the climate change. When we look at the climate change and agriculture, but I also want to put the agriculture is not the only one. We have to talk about the food systems, because agriculture is only 1 or 2 stages of our food systems. From the farm to the fork, food comes to our table. There are various kind of steps that is extremely important in relation to climate change. So we have to look at the picture more larger and more comprehensive manner. So what are the problems? The problems are not more production of more food, but making kind of just an economic order that people can have economically access to their food. This is extremely important, because if we talk about only demand-supply issues, then we can go wrong policies. And there's a danger right now going into wrong policies in relation to climate change. convention, especially because if we have a problem of food crisis, and if we have an increased population, if we have an increased demand, then what we have to do, we should make a big agricultural reform, new green revolution, larger agro-businesses, using GMOs and some other important technicalities that completely get rid of the small holder farmers and peoples, and more importantly, some of the climate change adaptation principles or adaptation policies are completely dangerous to people's right to food. We're going to talk about a whole day about how we can really go wrong if we make some kind of shifting to green energy or alternative energy using the biofuel or ethanol, or using clean development mechanisms that climate change convention really supports, which makes which trades completely local people's livelihood and food, which means we are in the very important period. We can go really wrong and make life much more miserable for the future for all of us. First, of course, for 3 billion that already food insecure, and then the food secure people will not be comfortable to live because we don't have a borders closed, completely live in our more comfortable life and ignoring the rest of the world. So this is an important issue for human rights, it's important issue for food security, and it's important issue is future of our world and life. Let me stop here, and I don't want to take more time, but a whole day we will be here, we will discuss details. This is just a general picture. We can't really go more specificity, but I'm happy to be together with you whole day. Thank you very much.